The Chicago Bears just walked into Green Bay, started the night looking stuck in mud, and still found a way to rip a win that might change the entire NFC race. One moment, it felt like the same old story. Stalled drives, long Packers possessions, Bears, fans, holding their breath again. Then everything flipped, and out of nowhere, you are watching Caleb Williams stand at midfield in overtime, drop a perfect strike to Jody Walker, and silence a stadium that has laughed at Chicago for years. Nobody expected this game to feel like a turning point for a franchise, but that is exactly what it looked like by the time the clock hit zero. The crazy part is how different the Bears looked in each piece of this game. Early on, you see DeAndre Swift pounding for tough yards, a couple of sharp throws from Caleb Williams, a defense that bends but refuses to give up the big shot, and still the score stays stuck. The Packers keep the ball, the Bears waste a red zone chance with a risky call, and it feels like one more night where the little details get in the way of a good team. Then the second half hits, Caleb Williams starts answering every blitz with fire, DJ Moore and Jody Walker become problems the Packers cannot solve, and Montez Sweat starts crashing the pocket at the exact moments Green Bay needs clean snaps the most. What looked like another lesson in frustration suddenly turns into the night Chicago finally punched back in this rivalry with real confidence. But here's the twist that almost nobody outside Chicago is talking about. This win was not some lucky comeback where the quarterback just woke up late. The story is much more interesting than that. The Bears did not lose this game early. They almost handed it away with decisions, miscommunications, and a plan that took too long to adapt to what Green Bay was doing on defense. Caleb Williams was locked in from the start, and the tape shows it. So now we are going to dig into that so-called slow start, drive by drive, and see what really went wrong with this offense in the first half and why the quarterback was never the problem. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Bears and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. The scoreboard made it look like the Chicago offense opened this game half asleep, but the first drive told a very different story. Caleb Williams walked onto the field and hit his first read over the middle like it was practice. Then watch DeAndre Swift slice through the Packers' front for steady chunks that pushed the ball deep into the red zone. A little jet touch for DJ Moore, a clean in-breaker to Jody Walker, a smooth rhythm throw underneath to Olamide Zaccheaus. Everything looked controlled and calm. Then inside the shadow of the goal line, the whole thing flipped fast. Swift gets stuffed by Javon Bullard and Key Walker. The call on fourth and short turns into a trick look. The ball hits the turf, and a drive that looked like a statement march suddenly turns into nothing. From the outside, it feels like a bad start. But on the tape, it is one bad choice, and one loose exchange at the end of an otherwise sharp opening series. After that, the night turned into a test of patience, more than a test of talent. On the next time out, Kyle Moonenguy comes in and pounds out positive gains. The line gets good movement, then a drop, a misread on a hot route, and a false start from the right side wipe out that rhythm in a blink. Caleb Williams does exactly what you want from a young quarterback in chaos. He bails out of collapsing pockets, throws the ball away instead of forcing it, and waits for routes from DJ Moore and Olamide Zaccheaus to uncover against tight coverage. 2-minute drill. Before halftime, he fires a strike to Colston Loveland, checks it down to DeAndre Swift, then gives Cole Kmet a chance on the sideline and watches him get grabbed all the way through the route with no flag. No wild misses, no blind heaves into double coverage, just a string of small breakdowns around him, penalties, protection issues, and contested throws that tilt every drive just off target. That is why calling it a slow start from Caleb Williams misses what was really happening. The Packers kept the ball for long stretches. Chicago had only a handful of chances before halftime, and each tiny mistake carried extra weight because there were so few possessions to fix it. Between the 20s, the Bears actually moved the ball with confidence, but red zone choices, missed pickups, and timing errors turned that movement into empty trips and a flat scoreline. The real story is not that the quarterback needed time to wake up. It is that Green Bay kept finding free runners at him, and Chicago did not give him enough built-in answers. So now the question becomes simple. What did those blitzes really look like? And how did Caleb Williams keep his composure while everything around him kept cracking. Green Bay did not sit back and wait for Caleb Williams to make a mistake. They went after him from the first real passing snap and kept testing how much chaos a young passer could handle. Safeties crept toward the line. Linebackers showed one look, then shot from the other side. Corners bailed late, so Caleb could not get a clean pre-snap picture. On a big chunk of his pass plays, the Packers sent extra rushers and trusted their back end to hold up long enough for the pressure to land. Free bodies flashed in gaps, edge rushers looped inside, and the pocket kept folding faster than any normal timing should allow. Instead, the game turned into a quiet test of who would break first, the rush or the quarterback. Every time a rusher flashed untouched, Caleb Williams slid, climbed, or drifted, keeping his eyes downfield even when it would have been easy to just eat the play. You could see him try to reset the pocket rather than run at the first sign of trouble, shuffle once, hitch once, then snap his hips and fire toward DJ Moore or Olamide Zacchaeus, if even a window the size of a hand opened up. When nothing showed, he chose the smart throw away instead of a hero ball into traffic, even though the crowd wanted magic on every snap. That is not the kind of trait that shows up in a box score, but it is exactly how you avoid the back-breaking turnover that usually comes when a defense keeps sending bodies at you. The hidden part of this story sits at the line of scrimmage, where protection calls, route rules, and coaching answers either help a passer survive this kind of plan or leave him stranded. There were snaps where DeAndre Swift stepped the wrong way, where an extra rusher came from depth that no one picked up, where a route from Cole Kmet or another target did not adjust fast enough to give Caleb Williams a simple outlet. Those details belong to the design and the teaching as much as they do to the players on the field. If a quarterback is seeing waves of pressure that often, he needs built-in tools that punish it. That is why the next piece of this breakdown has to shift from the player to the people calling the plays, and how much more Ben Johnson and this staff could have done to tilt this matchup back in their favor earlier. When people talk about this new Bears era, they start with Ben Johnson just as fast as they mention Caleb Williams, and that is not an accident. The same coach who turned a broken attack into one of the most creative units in the league is the one dialing up the motions, the shifts, the play designs that make defenses panic. You can see his fingerprints all over this season, from how DeAndre Swift is used in space to the way DJ Moore and Jahdae Walker are moved around the formation to stress coverages. That is the bright side, the proof that Chicago finally has a mind on offense that matches the talent on the field. But inside this Packers game, that same creativity sometimes cut against them, and you could feel the difference between a brilliant idea on the chalkboard and the right call in the moment when the team just needed one simple yard. What nobody wants to say out loud is that the Bears made this game harder than it had to be with how they answered pressure. Against other teams, we have seen Ben Johnson lean into play action over and over, using the threat of DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai to slow down pass rushers and create clean windows for Caleb Williams. In this matchup, that part of the plan felt muted, with a lot more straight dropbacks into looks where the Packers were already loading up the rush. The screen game rarely showed up as a true weapon. Hot routes from players like Olamide Zacchaeus or Cole Kmet did not punish blitzers often enough, and there were not many quick, built-in answers that forced Green Bay to pay a price for sending extra bodies. When an unblocked rusher screams free because a protection check is late, that is not just on Caleb Williams or DeAndre Swift. It is on the structure they were given before the ball was snapped. The shocking part is that all of this is fixable, and that is what makes it so important right now. Ben Johnson has already proven he can design an attack that lifts a young quarterback and turns a roster with scars into a confident group. But games like this reveal where the next jump has to come from. The Bears need that same level of detail in fourth and short decisions, in blitz beaters, in early script adjustments, as they already have in their explosive concepts and red zone ideas. Because while the offense was wrestling with those choices, the other side of the ball was playing a very different kind of chess match, with Dennis Allen quietly building two separate plans for Jordan Love and Malik Willis. That defensive strategy tells its own story about risk, patience, and how to protect a lead, and it changes the way we look at everything that happened in this win. On the other side of the ball, Dennis Allen walked into this game with a very clear plan for Jordan Love: keep everything in front, take away the deep shot, and dare the Packers to live on short gains. Chicago sat in soft shells, a lot of 2 deep and cover 4 looks, letting throws to Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed land underneath, while the safeties stayed parked over the top. It looked passive at first, long drives, patient checkdowns, the kind of defense that tests fans more than it tests the quarterback. But then you see the result, a 13-play drive that dies on 4th down, another 14-play drive that stalls in the red zone and turns into a field goal, and 0 deep attempts from Jordan Love all night. Quietly, the Bears were saying, you can move the ball, but you have to be perfect for a 70 or 80-yard march, and we do not think you can be. The cost of that patience showed up in real time of possession pain. Every time the Bears thought they had the stop, a flag hit the turf. Roughing the passer calls wiped away sacks. And one moment, with Jaquan Brisker arriving just a beat too high on a sliding quarterback gifted Green Bay another 15 yards and a fresh set of downs. The scoreboard stayed kind, only 16 points allowed, but the defense was on the field forever, while the offense watched from the sideline. Then the whole puzzle changed when Malik Willis stepped in. Instead of sitting back the same way, Chicago brought a safety closer to the box, mixed in more single high, sprinkled a little cover one, and tried to choke off his scrambling lanes. That adjustment came with its own price. More space outside, a deep shot up the sideline to Romeo Doubs, broken contain that turned into long runs, and a backup quarterback who suddenly had the freedom to test them downfield. In the end, both plans did their job on paper. They held Green Bay to 16 points and kept the Bears alive on a night when the offense took a long time to cash in. But you can feel the trade-off in every snap. Long, exhausting series that drained the defense, limited possessions for Caleb Williams, and forced Chicago to live on razor-thin margins. It makes you wonder what would have happened if Dennis Allen had stayed in that deep umbrella against Malik Willis, trusted his rush, and made him string together the same long drives that wore down Jordan Love. Those questions matter because the entire game swung once the Bears finally started stacking stops at the right moments, giving their quarterback extra chances to flip the script, and that is where the second half story turns into something completely different. At some point in the third quarter, you could feel the whole energy of this game start to tilt, and it began with Caleb Williams deciding he was not waiting around anymore. The same rush that had been crashing into him now watched him step through arm tackles, slide out of crowded pockets, and fire throws on the move that hit DJ Moore and Jade Walker before defenders could even react. A blitz flies off the edge. Caleb Williams drifts, flips the ball to Kyle Monangai, and suddenly a play that should have been a loss turns into a long run up the sideline. The timing sharpens, the ball comes out quicker, and every snap feels like a small test of trust that the quarterback and his receivers keep passing. Green Bay is still bringing heat, but now the Bears are making them pay for every extra body they send. Once the rhythm clicks, the drives start to stack, and this is where the night turns from survival into something much bigger. On the game-tying march, Caleb Williams stands in against pressure and rips an in-breaker to DJ Moore, then finds Cole Kmet settling into a tight window, then lets Jade Walker go win a ball down the field with perfect touch over the corner. Later, in overtime, the moment feels almost too big to breathe, the crowd roaring, the season hanging on every yard. Caleb Williams hits his drop, scans left, comes back right, and trusts Jade Walker one more time with a throw that drops over the shoulder like it was dropped out of the sky. At the same time, the defense finally cashes in on all those long series, with Montez Sweat and the front closing lanes squeezing the pocket and forcing the stops that give the offense extra chances to finish the job. The same game that had been crawling for so long suddenly turns into a flurry of clean decisions and clutch execution on both sides of the ball. That is why this finish matters so much more than just another win in the standings. The Bears did not panic when the night dragged. They adjusted, leaned on their young quarterback, and showed they can close out a rival on the road when the margin is as thin as it gets. That kind of ending sends a message across the conference, because once you prove you can win a game like this in December, people start asking a different question. If Chicago can play like this when everything tightens, what does that mean for the playoff race, the NFC North, and even the fight for the top seed? That night in Green Bay did not end when Jade Walker crossed the goal line. The shot kept rolling across the league. While Bears fans were still trying to calm down, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Detroit Lions played a wild finish of their own. A game where Jaylen Warren kept breaking loose, Chris Boswell barely missed a kick, and Jared Goff almost pulled off a miracle at the end. When the flag settled and the result finally stood, Chicago was locked into the postseason for the first time since that strange 8-win and 8-loss year that never really felt like a real run. This time it feels different, because a team led by Caleb Williams did not sneak in through a side door. They fought from 0 wins and 2 losses to a position where the rest of the NFC has to track their every move. One overtime dagger to the Packers, one chaotic finish in another city, and suddenly the Bears are not just in the bracket, they are part of the story that can shape the top of it. Now the math turns simple and heavy at the same time. Chicago sits in range of the NFC North crown, with a path where one more Bears victory or one more Packers stumble would be enough to claim the division and lock in a top seed. The race for the number 1 spot is even more dramatic. Win the next 2 against the San Francisco 49ers and the Lions, and then hope the Seattle Seahawks slip just once down the stretch while the Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles fight for their own lanes. At the same time, Green Bay has to sort out who is even under center, with Jordan Love in the concussion process and Malik Willis dealing with a sore throwing shoulder after taking hits from Montez Sweat in that Bears front. Add in the health questions around pieces like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Rome Odunze, and Luther Burden, and you get a playoff picture where every snap, every inactive, every late flag can tilt the seedings. This is not about sneaking into a wildcard game anymore. It is about whether a group led by a young quarterback can push all the way to home field in a week of rest. The wild thing is how fast expectations changed once those doors opened. A few months ago, the safe hope was simple progress. Play meaningful games late, look competent, build a foundation. Now you have DeAndre Swift closing in on 1,000 rushing yards, Caleb Williams chasing the single-season passing mark for this franchise, and a locker room that walks like it expects to be hosting playoff games instead of watching them. That raises a different kind of question for the rest of this breakdown. If this is what the Bears look like already, with new pieces still learning each other and scars from past seasons still fresh, what happens when this culture fully settles in? That is where the story shifts from standings and tiebreakers to something much bigger, a new standard in Chicago, and what it really means for this team to step into a new era. For a long time, Chicago lived with seasons that felt heavy before they even kicked off. Coaching changes, messy rosters, quarterbacks who never quite fit, a whole city waiting for something real. That is why this win in Green Bay hits different. It did not feel like a fluke bounce or a lucky call. It felt like a line in the timeline. You saw a young Caleb Williams walk into the same stadium that has broken Bears' hearts for years and close a game that used to close on Chicago. One overtime throw to Jade Walker will play on highlights for a long time. But the real shift is quieter. It is the feeling that this is not the ceiling. It is the first real sign that this group can carry the weight that comes with that jersey. Inside the locker room, you can sense that they know it too. Veterans who have lived through losing streaks now watch a quarterback stand behind the podium, calm, direct, talking about how much he trusts the staff and the guys around him instead of making it about himself. Players talk about Ben Johnson setting the standard, about how every detail in practice connects to what happens when the pressure hits. And that is not how Chicago used to sound after prime time. You have DeAndre Swift running like he wants every carry, DJ Moore winning in big moments, young targets like Jade Walker seizing their shot, and a defense with pieces like Montez Sweat changing games at the exact right time. The faces are new, but the mindset looks like the teams Bears fans always wanted. Tough, smart, unshaken when the game gets weird. The exciting part, and maybe the scary part for the rest of the conference, is that they are building this identity while still learning how good they can be. Caleb Williams has not even hit a full year in this system. The roster still has spots to upgrade, and they are already talking about division titles, top seeds, and January football in the cold with the crowd behind them. Nights like the one in Green Bay are supposed to come at the end of a window, not near the beginning, and that is what makes this moment feel so big. If this is what Chicago looks like while they are still ironing out the rough edges, imagine the pressure they can put on the league Once this version of the Bears walks into San Francisco, faces Detroit again, and steps into the playoffs, knowing this was never just about one win over the Packers. It was about proving that this team is ready to act like it belongs at the center of the NFC story.